Alright, here we go. Alright everybody, welcome back to another Embrace Destiny KAZ PhD live stream and YouTube video. We are continuing our KAZ Learns About series. If you're new to the channel or new to the series, basically I stream this and I want to learn about different things. And we've got a great community full of people who know all kinds of stuff that I don't, so yeah, I'd like to learn. Last time we did it, we talked with Sixfootdwarf about IT support. And this week, we're actually going to learn about acting from our friend Dork, Dorkababy77. So, if you're interested in this, feel free to check out the description below. If you're here in the stream, thank you for joining. And if you would like to participate in a future stream, you can jump into the Discord at any time, and there's a sign-up sheet, and there you go. And on that note, by the way, I've had some people ask, you don't need to be, a professional. You don't need to be a doctor in some kind of thing. If you are, I've had people offer to teach me everything about Bionicle and Power Rangers and mythology and stuff. If you're interested, passionate, and somewhat knowledgeable about a subject, then you can come in and you can teach us. That's kind of how it works. Six, how you doing today? Maybe he jumped off as well. How about you?
Sorry.
No worries.
I'm alright.
Yeah, you're good?
Sorry, well, I'm collecting bounties.
Oh, yeah, no worries, no worries.
I'm back.
Alright, welcome back.
No,
Hello there.
I'm good.
Alright, everybody ready to go do some strikes?
Yep, that's fine.
Yep.
Alright, let's do
No
it.
more strikes, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Vanguard Ops, which is calling for Solar or Stasis this week. Here we go. Alright, so we got Dork joining us today. We are going to learn about acting. Dork, thank you so much. Oh, someone left the fire team.
Oh, I left because of inactivity. Great.
That's fair. Wouldn't be going to orbit without leaving someone behind, apparently. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, Dork, thank you so much for jumping in and joining us. Appreciate you taking your time and volunteering to jump in. Let me re-add you to the fire team here. So, yeah, I guess the obvious question is acting. What got you into it? When did you get started with wanting to act? What, was there an inciting incident or, just something you've been appreciating over time?
Alright, so when I was a wee lad... Oh, no.
I mean, I knew I wanted to work in the space industry when I was 5 years old, so, I mean...
Well, actually, that's actually partly true. I did actually start to get into it when I was actually a wee lad. Basically, when I was younger, I used to, my parents wanted me to, get distracted, doing a bunch of, recreational activities, some people might do sports or, go to after school, enrichment stuff. My parents, enlisted me in, I think it was 1 or 2, maybe 1, I don't remember, it was years ago. Community theatre groups. I don't know if you know what community theatre is.
It's like a voluntary group that runs plays and stuff.
Yeah, it's basically, community theatre is just like a theatre group that, runs productions, and it's meant to, the whole point of it is that it's meant to involve the community around it. It's meant to, have people from, the public and bring them into the production, etc., etc. And yeah, I started when I was very young, doing acting and all that, and I really enjoyed it. In fact, I was actually one of those people that would just, whenever somebody forgets their lines, I would just go up behind them saying, psst, psst, hey, your line is X, Y, and Z. But yeah, eventually, after I think a few years, I kind of drifted away from it. I don't remember why. Hold on a second, I need to turn down the game volume, it's way too loud. Yeah, I don't remember why. I think it's just because I just started to lose interest a little bit, because, I guess I was just a kid, it was just doing the same thing over and over again, it might be a little mundane. then I started doing other stuff like science. I was gonna do biophysics when I applied for university like 2 years ago, but I decided to not do that because I wanted to get back into acting again, which is where I am now. I'm in my second year for college, for performing arts, level 3.
Okay.
And yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot. In the meantime, like in between like time for like class hours and all that, I basically made it a point to try to do stuff on my own, if that makes sense. Like try to get involved with a bunch of like as much theater stuff as possible. So for example, I'm actually doing volunteer work for a dance group right now called We Move Dance, and they do like a bunch of like like I don't know if you know what physical theater is. Do you know what physical theater is?
Nope, not really. I mean,
it's basically like what the name suggests. It's basically theater that mostly involves like physical movements and using your body to express yourself, right? And yeah, it's involved like a lot of it's like dance and all that.
Okay.
So yeah, I got involved in that. I'm doing voluntary work for those guys, and yeah, we're doing like right now we're doing a we're doing a performance that we're actually recording and putting on YouTube when it's done.
Ooh, nice.
That's basically all about this guy who's going through a rough time, and the way he gets through that rough time is, ironically, video games, right? Because I remember when we were still conceiving it, we were like, okay, what's something that everybody can agree on? Like, what's something that we all want to do for this? And we were like, oh, video games. We all love video games, right? And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So
nice.
yeah, that's what we're doing for that. I think, yeah. I also, a few years ago, I also started to do another community theater group called Chicken Shed. May have not heard of that. That's like a Haringey thing. And yeah, I'm doing a bunch of other stuff right now. I don't quite remember. There's like an entire list of things I'm doing.
Right, super busy. All right, well we'll definitely come back to specifics. But yeah, it sounds like a good overview, right? So you did it when you were younger. You when you started looking at college, you decided to jump back in, and you're also doing a bunch of like kind of voluntary community stuff for fun and for your own benefit.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, so I presume that there's a lot to learn in acting. I mean, you're going to school for it, and I'm sure you get to be involved with a number of different projects. But in terms of the learning, tell me a little bit more about that, because like I remember my university stuff, and it was just thousands of hours of like I'm in STEM, right? So I'm in like science and math and tech and all that. But tell me a little bit more about like your curriculum in your acting school.
Right. So basically the course that I'm doing right now is called the B-Tech, which is a little different from an A-level, but it's still like the level I'm doing it at, which is level 3. It's meant to be the exact same. Like it's meant to be treated as the exact same as an A-level, right?
Okay, now hold on. A-level, B-level.
A-level, B-level.
In terms of what? Like what are we grading here? Like,
okay,
what's the difference between A-level acting and B-level acting, other than, I don't know, which one makes the tabloids?
Right. Yeah. A-level acting. Well, A-level for anything in the UK, it's basically just like the college level of like degree.
Okay.
B-Tech is depending on what level you do it at. It's like it could be like. How do I say this? It could be treated as the exact same like level as A level, but if you do like a B-Tech at level 2, for example, your degree it'll still be good, but it won't be at the same like
I see. So it's a
point.
university kind of Yeah, I get it. Because like in North America, they don't do that. They might say college versus university, or they might say, yeah, okay, I understand. So is there a difference in terms of? Because in Canada, where I'm from, a lot of the difference is the difference between practical versus theoretical. Is there something? Is there something to that in the whole B level?
A little bit more like that. So, sorry, Doc, I'll jump in because I know a little bit about this bit.
That's okay.
The way the UK, what the UK decided it would do was it would change how it did exams and things, so that all grades are worth points, and points can be used to help you get to the right level. So
tariff points.
A degree, like a degree has a set amount of points. If you get enough points, you get a degree.
Okay.
The difference between a BTEC and an A-level is a scholastic exam result. So it's going to school and doing the course. BTECs were brought in to help people who didn't do very well at school, got a job. It was kind of a way of you being able to go to college and prove you could do the same work, but it could also fit around what you were doing, so the employers had more incentive to pay for the training.
That's very cool.
The idea is that like it's meant to be graded in a different way, as in like you're graded not on your exams. Well, partly with you're graded on your exams, but mostly you're graded on like actual like practical coursework.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Cool,
for example, like with somebody like me who, you know, took a break from acting, then went back into acting, BTEC is perfect because, you know, I don't like have like an actual like secondary school degree for drama, right?
No, that makes perfect sense now. I just wanted to, you know, I know we're gonna get deep into the acting terms, but we gotta walk before we can run. So cool. So you're doing B stuff. So it's you know, a slightly different shape of the curriculum, and the intensity is a little bit different. So like what kinds of stuff? Like what you know, I guess first, did you have to pick some kind of specialization, or are you in kind of the general setup of your curriculum now? And follow up to that, like what kinds of stuff are you taking? Like what are your classes called? What are, you know, stuff like that. I'm curious what your stuff is, because I had like really ridiculous classes, right? Like, you know, partial differential equations and all this nonsense that's not really fun to talk about. So I'm just wondering, like, what's a day in Dork's classes? What'd that look like?
Yeah, a day in the life of me. You know, it's funny you say that, actually, because this is actually the second college I went to. I mentioned before that I did a science degree before. I did very well in that, but I did a science degree beforehand for 2 years. And then after that, I decided to move over to acting. So the second college I went to, which is the one I'm doing right now, I'm actually only doing acting because most of my other degrees I did in the first college, if that makes sense.
Right.
So right now the only class I do have, which is for like I think it's Monday to Thursday, it's level 3 performing arts, and we have 3 teachers that basically teach like different aspects of it. Like performing arts, it's, how do I say this? It's meant to be like a broader kind of like thing when it comes to acting, but you can choose what specifically you want to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, it's like that with anything, right? Like when I went through for engineering, I had to do first year chemistry and first year like other stuff, and then later on it was like, oh, but I'm not interested in that type of engineering, so I'm gonna go, you know, take these specialist classes.
Right. Six, you were gonna say something?
Yeah. So like, is it just acting, as in, you know, playing a part, learning the role, or do you do a bit of the background, like do you do set design and prop making, and does it, you know, because like I don't know how much it covers. There's such a large amount of goals.
Yeah, exactly. Like an actor is only one person involved in the production of any theatrical work. So are you learning about those as well, or are you really just focusing purely on the acting portion?
That's a good question. When it comes to performing arts, I mean, there's even there's a part of it where you can learn about stand-up comedy, which is hilarious to me. But yeah, the the units that we chose, it's mostly to do with like theater and film, right? But some of it it's like, I think one of the units that we chose was a little different, but I don't quite remember that one because it was like the one thing that we did differently. But yeah, I think the unit that we're doing right now is actually the one that we just did was individual performance, which is basically us devising an entire piece, setting up the costuming, the lighting, the music. I was gonna have Ave Maria in my performance, right? And
Right.
we basically we get a commission, a fake commission, right, from a fake company, and we're meant to do a performance to that commission.
You're right. Yeah, you have an assignment. You have like a specific task that's defined for you.
Basically, yeah.
You're effectively a one-man show or woman show.
Yeah, man or woman, or in between.
One person. A
One
person.
person.
Show. That's a better choice of word.
Yeah, exactly. One-man band. Or one-person band, I should say.
Yeah.
Oh, this is... Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, that's... I don't really know what else to say about that.
Well, okay, so it sounds like, it sounds like a lot of what you're focusing on here is the, is application, right? You're taking a B level, which is, is more about doing versus, studying. It's less about exams and more about exams plus experience. And the classes you're mentioning are very, classes that you're mentioning are very, application based. Is there any theory? Are you having to learn about theory in your classes?
We do. In fact, one of the first things that we learn in theory was you probably have heard of him, but have you ever heard of Konstantin Stanislavski?
So yes,
No.
But definitely inform our audience because I've only heard the name. I don't know why I know that name.
Yeah, sure. Konstantin Stanislavski. I'm terrible because I don't exactly remember when he was born and all that. But
doesn't matter.
The main important thing you need to know is that he was the person who basically invented the acting method, or the main acting method that you see that most people, most actors, use across theater and film. Just to
is that
a big
the method,
example
or
here.
are there other methods?
There are different methods, but Stanislavski is the main method that most actors use.
Okay.
It is basically, the idea is that you don't just act like a character, you think like a character, you basically become a character.
Right.
For example, a big name who definitely does take, method acting very far is who's the guy who played Batman in The Dark Knight? I don't remember his name. Christian Bale. Yeah,
Right.
Christian Bale.
Mm-hmm.
For example, what he did was he literally, he was really skinny in The Machinist, but he buffed up in a few months to to be able to actually play Batman, right?
Right.
He basically lived like Batman, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Now, you don't always have to go that far.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that you're meant to change your mindset to think like the character that you're playing, right? So, for example, what I do a lot of the time when I'm using that method is, for example, if there's a scene where I have to be sad, for instance, and I have to cry, I just think about a previous experience that made me cry, that made me really upset, and I just put that at the forefront of my mind, and I just focus on that and only that, and I start crying.
Yeah, makes sense. Somebody in the chat, Striker, saying Bradley Cooper in American Sniper is a good example of that too. Yeah. I mean, method acting. If I presume to know what it is, it seems to be it makes it comes across in the press more often than any other aspect of acting. You either never hear about how acting works, or you hear about method acting. And unfortunately, well, it mileage may vary, as we say, but basically you either hear about how, like, Daniel Day-Lewis will stay in a wheelchair and everybody has to call him by his character name for 6 months of shooting. You hear about that, or you hear about some of the worst stuff where people play villains in a movie, so they act like villains on set, even when they're not filming, which is
Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
Heath Ledger was. I know he used to use method acting because he was very hardcore into it.
Yeah. It definitely, like, when it makes the news, it's either, for me, I usually hear it in, oh, that's interesting, or, oh, you went too far kind of way. The interesting is where it'll be like, oh, I had to play a cowboy in a film, so I actually volunteered at a ranch for like 6 months, and stuff like that. Like, that's cool. But then you hear the other side of the story, which is, I was a jerk on set, and like I played a villain in the movie, so I just completely tormented my fellow, which like anything, you can go too far, right? So I'm sure that's no stranger. Okay,
Sure.
so when about this guy kind of formalize this method? Like, you don't need to give me an exact date, but are we talking like 18? Like, I guess, acting or being in kind of any kind of production, that's not new, right? Like dramatic work has been existing forever. And even when you read certain plays, like Greek plays and Shakespearean plays, you can see, even if it's not. Like, you can see the stage direction, Greek plays had a lot of choruses and stuff like that, where you would have people who were almost like meta commentators. So when did this? Would you say Stanislavski? Is that his name?
Yeah.
When about did he kind of formalize this method?
I believe it's like around like this
Like
is like not
1800,
an
19
exact date.
Yeah.
It's like 1930s, I believe.
Okay.
Like,
So relatively,
Isn't that like around when like the first films actually started to come out?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like around 1930s, time-ish.
That's when it became a proper. That's when it was realized it was going to be a thing to stay on it. The only thing I know about acting is I know, thanks to QI, I know a very random fact about acting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know the phrase "steal my thunder"?
Oh yeah.
That came from acting.
That did come from acting.
Is that
that's
referring
right,
to
yeah.
applause?
It come from acting, yeah.
Is that referring to?
Nope.
No. Okay.
There was a guy tried to put on a play, and the play was a failure, so they switched him out to Macbeth. But what he'd done is he came up with a way of using sheets of metal to make a thunder sound. And also a way of what they used to do is they had a tube that ran around the outside of the building, and they would roll a cannonball down it, and it would sound like thunder. And they kicked him out and basically went, "Your play is terrible, we're putting Macbeth on," but they stole the things that he used to make the thunder. And
Wow.
That's literally where the phrase "steal my thunder" comes from. Was that some theatre house went, "We're nicking that, that's a great idea."
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I don't know why, but sometimes when I think about that story, it just makes me kind of chuckle, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of interesting anecdotes in the history of film, and I presume acting as well.
It's a form of media, let's face it, where the sentiment of mimicry and copying is a sign of success. If you're being copied, you've done something well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, are there other methods of acting, like other? Because I mean, like, that certainly seems like a easy to learn, hard to master approach, and maybe the most direct approach, right? How do I act sad? I think about sad things, and then then I am sad. And I'm not trying to reduce what you're saying. I'm saying that like
Fair enough.
it's one of those things that it's probably what most people think about, but I'm sure there are variations or depth that people don't think about. But
Yeah, I mean, like,
I don't know about them.
if you compare it to like any like in Destiny, right? It'd be like using a shotgun, right? In PvP,
Right.
it's easy to pick up and use, but like you see all the best PvP players use it in like crazy ways, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that.
Right. Now, are there other methods? I don't even know. Like, does that even make sense?
No, it makes sense. Well, I mean, one other method, that actually you remind me of this when you mentioned Greek plays. I don't know if you know this, but you probably do. But in ancient Greece, they used to use a lot of masks, right?
Mm-hmm.
In their performances, mask work. There's another practitioner that we learned about called Stephen Burkoff. Yeah,
Okay.
Stephen Burkoff. You may know him from Rambo.
Mm-hmm.
He actually was inspired by somebody who used masks a lot, and he applied that to his acting method, which is called total theater. Basically, what total theater is a combination of Stanislavski's like method of like having a lot of dialogue and realism, but also having like mime and sometimes masks, but mostly using your bodies. Like for example, have you heard of a like performance or like a movie or something called oh dear, what is it called now? Oh yeah, Metamorphosis. Have you heard about that?
Possibly.
I have not watched it.
Have you watched The Fly before?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's basically that. Well, yeah, The Fly was inspired by Metamorphosis.
Oh yeah.
It's
Okay.
about...
Okay. Yeah. Was it by Ovid?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. Tell us more.
Yeah. So basically, with Metamorphosis, I watched this play when he did it. With Metamorphosis, it's basically about this guy because like he works like 24 hours, 365, right? And he gets so stressed out that he literally, or metaphorically, like it's yours to interpret, turns into a beetle, right?
Mm.
And
We've
the
all been
guy
there.
on stage, he would move his body in such a way that would make him like you could see him as a beetle, right? Or like you could see him as a beetle in human form, like he moves like a beetle, right?
I
But
see.
he also like has dialogue that reflects that too. So for example, there's one scene in the play where he would he would go down the stairs for the first time and everybody would see him, and he would be like, "Oh mother, do you not recognize me?" And everybody would be like screaming, and he'd be like crawling around everywhere. It's like it's crazy. But yeah, that's another acting method.
What's kind of interesting about that? Hey, Al, welcome. We're talking about acting right now. Currently, talking about different styles of acting, different methods. Yeah, I see. So you've got like method acting where it's like, you are the character, embrace that feeling, draw upon your own experiences. And then I guess you have like metamorphosis mask work where, yeah, I guess method acting is kind of bring your own experiences onto the role, and this other one is more the opposite in a way. It's the role is turning you into that character.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Well,
And you
it's
know
more
what?
like mimicry, innit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. And you know what? I would say this when I use masks, it's when you use mask, it's actually really interesting because when you put on the mask, it actually helps the audience and yourself focus on your physical movements.
Oh yeah.
So you don't have to worry about like your expressions because your mask is gonna be over your face, right?
Is
Yeah.
it those? Is it like those plain white masks that just don't really have an expression on them? Is it them?
Uh, it could be any mask, but like that's usually like what people think about when yeah,
It's
mask work.
well, it's interesting, right? Because like so in university I used to wear a cape and a cloak. I used to wear it around, um, and it's very true that like whenever you wear any kind of costume or outfit or have any kind of like a prop or an accessory, it really helps to kind of put you into that frame of mind. And I guess to put the audience in the frame of mind as well. Like, if you're supposed to, well, if you're pretending to be like a criminal or a violent like murderer, and you have a knife in your hand, well, it's a lot easier to imagine and visualize. I would imagine, I would
Right.
suspect. But yeah, putting on a mask, like as soon as I mean, think about it with Halloween, right? Like if you have the costume, it's so much easier to get into. Oh wow! I just died in a what? I did not die.
Give me a
Okay.
moment. I'm not gonna be there, but I'm just typing something in real quick.
Yeah, you're fine. I'm right behind you, Six, to your left. Um, yeah, like Chad, I don't know if you've done that yourself, but I feel like as soon as you put the oh, I don't think I'm gonna make it. Oh, I did.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I just searched up just now. He was Steven Berkoff was inspired by Artaud and Brecht. Artaud is a German director, and he is kind of similar to Stanislavski, but different because it's more. How do I say this? It's more dramatized. What he does. It's meant to be about sending a message, if that makes sense.
Right, and I can imagine that with your Beetle example, where you are bringing that element right out front and really kind of displaying it for the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
So like
Slightly different note then.
yeah, go ahead, Six.
I've always wondered, how do you go about looking at a role? Like, as an actor, do you go for any role that's available and just hope for the best, or do you sort of, what is it that makes you go, that's the role for me, that one there?
Yeah, that's
Like,
a good question. Yeah, go on.
I understand from my point of view, like from my job, I understand if I want to go a certain route, I know what to do. Like that's the role for me to get there. But actors, you've got to choose on a regular basis, and I've always been curious about how you decide.
That's a good question. I would say that it's different for everyone because a lot of people they have standards. They have like a brand that they want to upkeep, right? Like for example, I know plenty of actors who who just explicitly said that they never want to. I don't remember his name, but there's an actor that said that they never want to be in a performance where you have to wear a skirt or something, right? And that's fair. If you want that's how you keep your brand, right? With me though, because here's the thing with acting, you have to be comfortable with doing a lot of weird things, right? For example, one time for a performance that I did, I literally had to rip my shirt off and scratch my head with my foot like a dog, right? And those kinds of experiences kind of made me sort of numb to the not wanting to do a specific role because it makes me feel weird because I do weird things all the time. So yeah.
So for you, it's not necessarily that's too weird or out my comfort zone. It's all about does the character capture you type thing?
Yeah, it's mostly about like, when I look at a script, right? I just think first I actually try it like at home and like I go through it, and if it doesn't if I don't feel it, so to speak, then I just I just turn it down.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, there was one thing that in the there's a media department in my college, and they're doing a horror film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they gave me the script, I read through it. I tried it out at home, but when I went through it, right, I just didn't. The character didn't click with me, so I just went back and respectfully said, okay, I like the idea of it, but if I'm gonna do it, you might have to change the character up a bit, because it doesn't really. I don't think it doesn't really make much sense for me to do it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
can they do that? Can they just like? Does that happen?
Well, no, that's not usually how it happens. In the actual work environment, usually when you just turn down a performance, they just think, unless you're like Johnny Depp or something, right?
Yeah, or I've heard cases where the role or the story or the character might change a little bit, but it's usually, from what I've heard, it's usually either they want a particular actor, so they're willing to make compromises that fit the actor, or the actor grabs onto something interesting about the character that the writers or the director didn't originally think of, and when the actor's like, yeah, I think it would make sense to do this, they say, oh yeah, okay, go for that, try that, and you can kind of build that character together.
One example of that is actually Ryan Reynolds. Everybody here has probably watched Deadpool, right? He has had a lot of influence on the script. Like he changed the script a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. For example, Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark. He based his performance on a number of things, and he there's an anecdote about how in the Avengers movie there's food everywhere. Tony is always snacking on stuff, and that's actually because Robert Downey Jr. was always snacking on stuff, and the crew kept trying to remove his food, and he kept sneaking it in anyway and hiding it on set and stuff like that. So they just made it part of his character, and it kind of worked. It made sense that a highly functioning, fast-talking, character like this would just have food everywhere, and it's that blend between art and life.
Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, actually, I do want to say that it's important as an actor to be respectful of the people around you, right? You have to be able to listen to other people's ideas, because it's not just you. It's not a single person thing. It's a team effort, right? Most of the time, anyway. And you have to have somebody walk up to you and say no, or oh yes, this is a great idea. Let me add my idea to it to make it even better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
If it's just you taking over the entire script, you might just fumble it.
Yeah. Question from the chat from L says, Dork, is there a role model that you had to learn about acting? So you talked about kind of the originator of acting, but do you have an acting role model that you either learned about in school or that you already knew about and you're inspired by?
Oh boy, yeah, I have many, but you know what? The first role model and my biggest role model to this day is Harrison Ford. I know it sounds cliche, but man, when I watched Indiana Jones for the first time, as a kid, I was taken away. So I basically just did as much research on him as possible.
Which I must point out is funny, because he's the most reluctant actor I've ever heard of.
I know.
That's funny. So what drew you
his
to
work is so good though.
Oh yeah. So what drew you to him? Oh, what was that? 6?
Did you know Harrison Ford wasn't originally supposed to be in Star Wars?
He was a
Yeah,
carpenter.
and he didn't want to be in Star Wars either.
He was
No,
a carpenter
he-
on set.
He was no. What he was doing is I was watching a thing about it, and he knows that he liked the director. You know, I'm going to forget his name. George Lucas.
Right.
And
Yeah.
as a favour to George, what he was actually doing was he was sitting in the auditions to play random characters so that they could like do the auditions.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept making him read Han Solo, and in the end, George was like, "I really want him to do Han Solo," and so they kind of had to force him to go, "Fine, I'll play him." But initially, he wasn't. He was doing a friend a favour.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's like it's one of the randomest things that you could think of for like a celebrity. It's just like, yeah, probably one of the defining movies that's ever been made, and he didn't want to be in it.
So, what drew you to Harrison Ford? I presume that it's what a lot of us, you know, he's very cool, he's very confident, stuff like that. But like as an actor, as a prospective actor, what did you look at and went, man, that's the guy?
I think it's a combination of like, well, right now I could think of the combination of two things, right? Number one, his work ethic, because I remember in a specific interview, I don't remember which one, he was talking about like, how he, views his audience, and he says he views acting as like a natural job, like he's trying to provide a product and he wants to, please his audience as much as possible, right? Which is, it's a good work ethic. I like that. I respect that about him. But it's also the fact that his the way he goes about acting, it's actually really inspiring to me because like the way he plays his characters, he doesn't just act as them, he owns them, right? For example, the one that I made before, Indiana Jones, right? When you think about Indiana Jones, you don't think about anybody else. You just think about Harrison Ford, right? And that's just because of the way.
Anyone else playing that role.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's the intricate things that he does, right? Like for example, do you remember the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where he's supposed to fight a swordsman in Cairo, but then he just shoots them instead, right? Which was hilarious, by the way.
Yeah,
That was actually not scripted. On that day, he was sick, so he decided to take the script in his own hands and just shoot him, and that turned out perfectly.
Yeah, and again, I would imagine that is probably a combination of he was highly favored for the role, but also he knew the character,
It's the same thing with Johnny Depp too, with Jack Sparrow. It's like all these people that like you think about that you can't think would like, for example, Jack Sparrow. Who would you ever see like playing Jack Sparrow other than Johnny Depp?
Well, okay, but I will say this though, as more of a curious audience member than anyone in acting, it's I think it's very tempting to say, well, this character was iconically played by this actor, and there's no way anybody else could do it. But there is a variety of acting talent and skill. Like, when I would never have thought that Zachary Quinto could play Spock. I would never have thought that the same guy who did 10 Things I Hate About You would play one of the most iconic Jokers on screen, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
so,
I would say it's all about the illusion, right? It's like you would have to play your role so good that you would make people think that you're the only one who could do it, right?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's about owning the part. And the thing is, I think multiple people can own the part, but either they do the same thing or they own it in different ways, and that can be risky, I guess. Like if one person plays a character one way, somebody else reprises that character and plays them a very different way, it can work, but I would imagine you have to you have to, yeah, you would have to definitely craft it and own it in
yeah,
like
the James Bond effect,
like
isn't it?
Will Smith with Aladdin, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Six has a good point. I mean, James Bond is a character. Doctor Who, we were talking about that the other day. Those are characters that are constantly changing who is wearing that mask, so to speak. And yet, they all, like, generally speaking, they all do a very good job in similar but different ways.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
all
do
about.
get what you mean.
Yep.
I have my favorite James Bonds that I think, those guys really nailed. Like, considering the time when it was made, Sean Connery and Daniel Craig, for me, they made that role something else.
Mm-hmm.
But so I do get what you mean. Like, I can genuinely see Harrison Ford off in the jungle looking for random treasure because he made that role so believable.
It's all about like making the role your own, right? Like, for example, with the Batman, with oh god, I forgot his name now. The guy who did Twilight.
Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson, yeah. Like, he could have like people were just saying that. I remember people were just saying that, like, oh, who can be better than the guy from The Dark Knight? I keep forgetting people's names now.
Heath Ledger.
Yeah, no, that's alright.
Yeah, the guy from The Dark Knight, right?
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right.
Or with the Joker, right? With Joaquin Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
But they changed the way they altered the role to make it their own. It's ingenious, I think, because it's different enough. It's like Destiny content, right? It has to be different enough to be interesting, but it has to be in like a.
Similar
it has to be
enough
within
to
a certain framework.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to be able to look at the character and see everything they've ever been, but at the same time, like Saint's storyline in Season of the Hunt, because we all know Saint the hero, but they were able to do that like in a different.
Yeah,
season
Season of
that as well,
Splicer, you
though.
mean?
Like you were talking to Season of Splicer, sorry. Because that was one of the things in the chat that you said you liked how they played that out.
Which one was that again? I don't even remember.
Splicer was about the Endless Night.
Yeah, it was the one where Saint was on about where, you know, the humans did attack a monster and Miss Right.
Yeah.
You know, Miss Right pulled him up and went, "Let me tell you about a monster."
Yeah, and then he told them about like the legend of the Saint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's kind of like that's the sort of thing, isn't it? That they took the character we all knew and made it something else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. You bang on the money there.
Because I remember in chat it was one of the things we talked about a lot, and you were often saying that was a really good way that they did it. This strike loves giving me exotics, but never ones that I want.
What did you get?
Dawn Chorus.
Oh, nice.
Still pretty good.
That's actually a good one. Oh, you should.
I just never used Solar.
For a Solar 3.0, you should definitely give it a try. It's a really high DPS exotic.
Just keep holding on to it and keep the one that has the best stat distribution for you.
Yeah, because I remember, because Netherrax told me to never get rid of exotic helmets as a warlock.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
So, okay. Preparation. How do you prepare for a role? And beyond the, beyond thinking of a sad moment and then feeling sad, like, how do you prepare? I'm curious about the work involved, because I know it's hard work. I know there's a lot there, but from the outside, it can be very easy to dismiss that, right? Oh, what do? You go play pretend all day? It's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I do. I do it for a job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but
Um,
so like, what are some things that you can do to prepare? What
yeah,
do
that's
you
a
do?
good question. Yeah, it's a different thing for if it's like if it's with a group or with it, if it's like a solo piece or if I make it myself. If it's like an ensemble piece, usually what I do is I go over the script with my co-stars, right? My
Mm.
classmates, etc., whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically I go over the script with them, and then after we understand it, after we can remember our lines, what we do is we go home and then we basically try to integrate what's going on in the script, like integrate that into what we're doing in real life. For example, there's one thing. There's one thing. Do you remember when I mentioned the thing where I had to rip off my shirt and like act like a dog, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I, this is gonna sound very strange, but basically what I did for that was because I have a dog at home, right? When I, when people just like to talk to their dogs, like, oh, how's it going? Who's a good little guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I did was I tried to literally act like my dog, as if I'm part of their species, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, again, it sounds it would sound like a madman, but I mean, it kind of it did help with actually me becoming that character, if that makes sense. Yeah, like with stuff like that, that's what I do. When it comes to solo pieces, it's a similar thing, but yeah, it's usually like faster because I don't have to wait for other people to actually understand their parts and Oh, but one other thing actually, almost forgot to mention about ensembles. It's important it's important that when you're preparing for a role, you all do it together. What do I mean by that? I basically mean when one person falls behind, you all fall behind, right? Because, for instance, say if you're doing a performance where you have a long dialogue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do specific actions, like for example, I don't know, you walk up in front of a table, and then you mime picking a book off of a shelf, reading it for a while.
Oh, did we lose you, or did you become so involved with acting? Six, can you hear me? What the heck happened there, chat? Hold on a second. Six, can you hear me?
I don't know. I can, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep. Can't hear Dork. He just stopped talking.
He's lost in the moment.
Yeah, he's really into it. All right. Well, I'm sure he'll.
We're now talking to Doc the dog.
Well, that's
rather
it.
than
Yeah,
Doc.
he fell into the method of becoming a dog. He's gonna start barking soon. I understand. Chat, don't be afraid to drop any questions in. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you have any follow-up questions, you can drop them in the comments below. I'll make sure that Dork sees them and can bring them your way. We'll see what happens when I'm sure he's just having some internet issues or some real-life stuff. Yeah, it's a good question, Striker. I'll bring it up when he comes back. I'll talk a little bit myself. So I am not, any stretch of the imagination. I'm not any kind of like actor or professional actor. I have some experience. I did some plays in high school. Most of my experience recently is in role playing, in playing like Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role playing games. And one of the things I think is really interesting is collaboration. So if you have a role where you are able to collaborate some, you are able to you are able to kind of work together with either the director or the other actors, I think it's really cool to be able to expand on what a character uh, is set up to be. So here's an example. I was playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Hey Dork, can you hear us at all in the voice chat? Because we can't hear you at all. Oh, hold on.
Message him fire team. I think his headset died.
Yeah, hold on. Hey Dork, can you hear us now? Oh, yeah, he's in the stream chat now, but he, like you said, I think he needs to fix his.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you
Yeah.
now.
Okay, cool. I don't know how this happened. It was just such a random thing.
No problem.
I'm on my phone now, so.
Okay, well, I'll quickly finish my story and we'll come back to you. We got a couple of questions in the chat for you.
Yeah,
So,
no problem.
I was playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, and we had a session 0, which is a lot of D&D games do that, where the players sit down and they discuss the characters they want to play, and because it's not a set story already, you have some leeway to create or expand on your characters. And this is a story I always tell about the collaboration of acting and things like this. Is I was playing a character in this edition called a shifter. They're basically descendants of werewolves or other kind of creatures like this. And so my character was part werewolf, and under certain conditions they could shift into that form. Now, when we were playing, 1 or 2 sessions in, we got into a combat, and one of my allies in the game we were set up as longtime friends, she was a sorceress, and her whole thing was that she had phases: phase of the sun, phase of the stars, and phase of the moon, and each of those phases gave her different mechanical bonuses. Well, during the combat, we were playing, and her character got hit, and she switched to phase of the moon, which made her more stealthy and resilient to attack. And I said, "Wait a minute, did you say phase of the moon?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." And my character, that up until that point had been a very neutral, very reasonable, kind of non-emotional type of character, he freaked out. He immediately became aggressive, and he ran over and he fought the person who had hit her and changed her phase. And we role played that her changing the phase of the moon drew upon my werewolf heritage and made my character a bit more, a bit more emotional, a bit more protective, things like this. So I was just saying that I like the collaboration that can happen when there's an opportunity in acting or role playing or anything like that, where other people are going to have some great ideas, or they're going to inspire great ideas from you. And you can't do it for everything, right? We're not all Johnny Depp, and we're not all in a piece that has that flexibility, but it's pretty cool when you can do that, when you can add something of your own or someone else's with permission into your character.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah. Before you do, Crucible or Gambit, fellas? What are we doing?
I think Gambit, honestly.
6, you good?
I'm not feeling Crucible today.
Gambit, fine. Gambit requires less concentration and
Sounds good. Okay, yeah. Please add to it, and then I got a couple of questions from the chat. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. Now, I was gonna say that I agree with you, Kaz, and I feel like with acting, at least for me, it's it's therapeutic, I suppose, in a way, because a lot of the time you have those days where you just want to be somebody else, right? Like, for example, if you're just having a crappy day, you were late for work because of reasons that are out of your control. You're behind on your rent, etc., right? And you just wish you could be somebody else. And I feel like with acting, I kind of, well, I don't exactly get to be someone else, but I get close enough, I suppose. And you get to express a lot of pent up emotions when you're playing a performance realistically. Yeah.
Yeah, the ability, acting in itself is a mask, and what's nice is that you can do things with acting that you can't or shouldn't or don't want to do in real life. You know, if you're so in our stream, if you're over on YouTube, this happens in the stream sometimes. People can ask me for a certain number of channel points to talk like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the reason that that exists in this chat is because when I was in university, I was a manager of a bunch of a project. So I was a manager of other students, and I would get upset with them sometimes because they wouldn't do their work, they weren't doing their stuff on time. But and I tried all the usual methods of encouragement and everything like this, and they weren't working. And so I was getting very angry. But you can't just yell at people. Like that doesn't really help. Doesn't really get anything done. But if I yelled at them like Arnold Schwarzenegger, then they laughed. They understood that I wasn't like, I was disappointed, but I wasn't like furious, and it allowed them to kind of understand the seriousness of the problem without feeling like it was directed at them. And I think I can see the therapeutic aspect of acting for sure. Like that you can go and just be a different person for a while and really immerse yourself. Let me jump to these questions before I forget. Striker says, yep. Dork, how important would you say getting a manager is to finding yourself some roles?
Oh, you mean like an agent, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. With agents, I don't think it's necessary at all. It does help to get roles because that's literally their job, right? They're meant to get jobs that are suitable for you, but you don't need it. You can go on like different like casting websites, and like for example, right now I'm signed on this website called Backstage, and they can directors and script writers, they can put up their like ideas, right, for performances, and then if you wanted to audition for that, you apply for that performance, that audition. You have like several websites like that. You can also meet people just in you can meet people like a lot of people would say that, and I agree. A lot of people would say that acting, if you want to get into acting, it's all about knowing the right people. Like for example, I know a lot of actors. They got their biggest roles through meeting directors in like cafes and pubs and all that. And yeah, like things like that. You just gotta like know the right people and put yourself out there as well. Like with the website thing I was talking about before.
Yeah, I guess it must be there is quite a bit of networking involved.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, getting a agent is good because you can get roles faster and easier. But yeah, if you don't have the money for an agent, it's fine. I mean, you don't need the things with agents. You don't actually have to. This is a misconception. You don't actually have to pay an agent up front. They actually charge you from like the performance that you do. Like they take a cut of your wage.
Okay, I see. Left side.
And
Gulch.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Sorry, you broke up.
Where you guys are?
Yeah, he's calling out where the invader is.
Yeah, he's in the left side of the map.
Yeah, he got us. He managed to move past the rocket. Very nice.
He didn't get me though.
L with another question. Is there something you'd like to inspire through acting? Have you encouraged other colleagues or people to go into acting to discover parts of themselves they didn't know about?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? I just want to think about that one.
Is there something that you would like to inspire with your acting, or is there something that you have inspired in others, like something for them to learn about themselves, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose what I would say is to that, I would like the things that I would like to take like across all my performances. The things I would like people to take away from those are, to consider like different perspectives. What do I mean by that? Take for example, your Saint 14 thing that you mentioned earlier, right? What happened to Saint 14? Everybody thought that he was a hero, right? And like he was a hero, but from a different perspective, he's a monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just want people to think that, think about that when they're seeing my performance. That everybody has their own story. Yeah, I don't know what do you think about that, Kaz?
Yeah, I mean that's a great answer. Like being able to see things from a different perspective. I mean, some of the people really enjoy watching like a good villain, and one of the reasons for it is not only because villains can be very, interesting, but a lot of actors will play a villain and they say, you'll hear them in their interviews, I'm not a villain. Like my character believes that what they're doing is the right thing, and that's how I played it. And that's not every villain needs to be like that. Sometimes for the story, it's emotionally necessary and fine for the villain to be like purely villainous. Exactly. But sometimes having
Robotnik. So
yeah,
Dr. Robotnik, Jim Carrey.
right. But having a sympathetic villain can be very useful as well. It can make you question what you think about villains. It can make you question the hero, and sometimes it's done in a way to make you sometimes it's done in a way to make you consider the villain's perspective, and sometimes it's done in a way so that when the villain is defeated, either it feels more earned, Depot straight ahead Gallahorn.
Yep. Oh.
Or or it feels better earned, I think. Yeah, exactly. People are.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. People, that's right. They already won it. It's all good. Yeah, we got people in the chat sounding off with different ones. And if you're on YouTube, drop some in the comments. We got Thanos, right? He thought what he was doing was right. Ra's al Ghul, stuff like that.
Razagul.
Yeah, I mean that.
Can we drop out Matt for a second? I've got to let the dog out. But
sure.
The latest Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix was exceptionally well done to change your perception of that character.
Yeah, they really tried to pin his development or his downfall, if you want to look at it that way, on a series of external events, pressures that really, took a somewhat broken or somewhat fractured person and made them more broken. But yeah, Six, feel free to jump out. We'll be here. Don't worry.
Give me a minute. I just gotta quickly leave, and then I'll come back. It's just for some reason my game crashed.
No worries.
All the problems are happening today. I have no idea what's going on.
It's all good.
On a side note, Viru, I'm doing all right, mate. And happy birthday for tomorrow.
Oh yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy early birthday, Viru. Yeah, I think.
Happy level up day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, think while you're getting back into the game, it's a good question that is being posed as to what do you want to inspire with your acting. I'm sure for a lot of people it's it's reality, right? You don't want to come across as not fitting or not being involved.
Can I just say something about that though?
Yeah.
It's not the same every time. Obviously, sometimes I would just feel like I would want to play like the hero, right? Like in Indiana Jones, for example. Like again, right? Or sometimes I'd want to inspire realism. But yeah, most of the time, I'd want to inspire that what I said earlier.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, you probably don't have the same mission for every role. I mean, maybe you have an overall mission, like you want to entertain people or something. But not every role is going to speak or say the same thing. Sometimes you just do it because it's fun, or you want to explore something different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine that. That would be something that would be interesting. I think if I was to pursue acting, is to do or become something different, right? And
Mm-hmm.
some
I need
of
an
the
invite, by the way. Sorry, I
yeah,
need an
no worry.
invite.
Yeah, one moment. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, one of the most interesting things I think in acting is when you have actors who can just become become completely different. They can immerse themselves in the role, and they don't look back essentially. And sometimes if they're really good, you don't even realize it's them. And part of
Mm-hmm.
that is like the special effects or the costuming and the makeup department. But a lot of that is the character, right? I mean, Gary Oldman is often described as a chameleon because he can play. He's played a variety of roles and he really sinks into it. But if you Sirius Black is a very different character from Zorg from The Fifth Element. Sirius,
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter, Sirius Black. He's a little bit in the first movie that he's in. He's a little bit deranged because of his past. He's confident, but he's quiet. He's got this like calm, cocky, quiet strength to him. And then you go
Mm-hmm.
into The Fifth Element, and he's still very confident, but he's loud, he's irritable, he's just ready to be unhinged. He's
Mm.
very methodical as well. Very, very different character. So
Yeah.
we got
Um.
questions piling up. So go ahead and keep talking about it, and I'll ask you another
Yeah.
thing in a moment.
Yeah. Sorry. Just before I do that, can I quickly? I got my microphone to work again. I'm gonna go to the waiting room real quick, and can you invite me back, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Chad, I'll catch up with your questions in a second. No problem. No problem. Test. Can you hear us, Dork?
Hello, hello.
Hey, there you are. Welcome back.
There you go.
All
Back
right.
to working order.
Yeah. Okay. Question for Auntie Christelle. How many projects do you typically work on at once, or are you usually working on just one performance at a time?
Yep, that's a good one. I mean, it depends on how busy I am because I got college and all that. But usually it's I just focus on. Well, I don't really think about the several projects. I look at it as like doing one at a time. But a lot of the time I find myself doing several projects at once because I get involved with other stuff outside of college, right? Like for example, the We Moved Dance I talked about earlier, or the community theatre thing that I talked about as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I usually just take things one at a time. Otherwise, it just becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. Catch up with chat. Uh,
I have to apologize, by the way. Like everything's breaking for some reason, and that is not in my control.
You're fine. You're fine. Okay, Striker says, have you watched Moon Knight? And if yes, then what did you think of Oscar Isaac's performance? To me, the fact alone of him not having other actors to play off of most of the time already makes it an amazing performance. Answer the question without spoilers if you can.
Okay, so basically, this is what happens in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
No, really though, it's interesting because I watched Moon Knight with a lot of the people that I know, my family as well, and they have before I get to my point, yeah, a lot of them is that well, some of them actually they said that they didn't like how Oscar Isaac's like when he does Demon Grant, it doesn't feel like he's actually got a good British accent, English accent, and I would agree. But I feel like that's actually a good thing because it feels like it makes me laugh like whenever I hear his voice because Steven's voice because it's like a hyper version, like an exaggerated version of like the English accent, like, "Hey mum, how's it going? Oh, I'm lost again." Like you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like his performance and Mark Spector as well. When he does Mark Spector, when he switches between the two is great. It's why I like Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin as well. It's like the duality of it is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seeing an actor have multiple roles within the same scene or within the same kind of character universe is definitely interesting.
Mm.
Um, have you done a role like that? Have you ever had to kind of do like a monologue where you switch voices or anything like that?
Yes, actually, it's interesting you bring that up because remember the performance the individual one I told you about?
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that performance it went through many iterations, but the one I landed on was basically I'm a serial killer, I'm a psychopath, right, in high society.
Mm-hmm.
So I would change when I do my dialogue. I would change from a respectable gentleman to a deeper, slower voice. Right? I'm not
Mm.
doing it right now, but like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to freak people out because
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty surreal for my audience, which is a good thing. They enjoyed it, but yeah, I did do that before, and it's so fun.
So you just mentioned like one aspect is the different voice. How do you switch? What do you use to build a boundary between your different characters? Either that you're different sides of the same character, or if you are doing multiple performances, at night you're doing some community theater, during the day you're doing some acting at school. Like, what do you do to set up a block so that you're like, no, 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 that's Mark Spector, that's Stephen Grant, don't cross them over.
Mhm. Yeah, I usually have like a set of like. Do you mean like a like? Do you
Like,
mean when I have different performances in the same act or in different acts?
I mean, in any way that you want to answer, the question started primarily as, uh, yeah, the question started primarily as how do you keep if you're playing Gollum, how do you switch between Gollum and Smeagol in the same scene? That's how it started.
Mhm. Oh, right, right,
So how do
right.
you how do you do that?
Yeah, yeah. For that, good question by the way. For that, what I do is I usually have like a set like I usually have a set like amount of like movements. Obviously, I add to it and change it. But I usually have like a set like style of movements when I play one side of the character, and then when I need to switch, I immediately go from that to like the other like move set, if that makes sense. Like for example, the performance that I told you about, the the respectable gentleman.
Hmm.
What I would do is I would basically like I'd put my hands together, had my chin up, I'd have a higher pitched voice, and I would I would walk slowly and with intent, right, wherever I went, right.
Hmm.
But when I went over to the the serial killer side, I would I would twitch my head, I would blink my eye, like my eye would be twitching.
And how does
Um,
the how does the physicality how does that help you? What does
how does
that
that help
do?
me?
Yeah, what does that do?
Yeah, what it does, it is basically, it's similar to when you surround yourself with props. It's a similar kind of feeling where like, when you're in an environment, a certain environment, it starts to become easier to act the way that you're supposed to act, and it's the same thing with like when you're moving, right? And when you're like, making like these little adjustments,
Hmm.
it's like when you act like a certain person, you usually become like a certain person.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
No, it definitely does. I understand you. Um, it sounds like, and the way I would imagine it is that a character, you know, a couple of different metaphors I can draw on here, but a character might have a file in your mind, a metaphorical file or a box, and certain things about them exist in that file or that box. And if you start,
yeah.
if you open that box and you're like, well, I don't know, when this character thinks, he always looks to the right,
Hmm.
or he always speaks in this way. Um, yeah, I imagine that, like you said, as soon as you start acting that way, as soon as you start adding the physicality into it, then it's easy. It's kind of easy to slip on. It's like as soon as you pick up, oh, I don't know, as soon as you put on a top hat, you're like, ooh, look at me, I'm so fancy. Why? Anybody can wear a top hat. Like a dog could wear a top hat.
Yeah.
That but you've associated it with that kind of thinking, that kind of behavior, and it's just like a set of clothing. It's the first step. You put on that mannerism, and you're there, and then you can add depth through other things. It's why impressions are fun, but the best impressionists are the ones who can go beyond the obvious. And there's something wrong with the obvious. I mean, like, that's what you need, that for the audience to jump into it, right? You need them to recognize what you're doing and to follow you. But once they've followed you, then you go, okay, so you know that I'm playing this character? Good. Let's go deeper. Let's do some really subtle stuff. Let's move beyond what you've already seen or known, right?
And you know what? To add on to that, I like to do this thing when I'm trying to understand the character, or like when I'm trying to understand the character that doesn't have that much context to it, like in a script. I would basically form like an entire backstory in my head, right? And what that does, it basically allows me to understand like what makes that character tick, what goes on in that head of theirs, right? When I understand that, it allows me to actually like act the way that they would, right?
Yeah, like how would they stand? How would they speak? What are they? What are they capable of? What are they thinking?
Yeah, and it's especially important because it's important to understand that when you're in a scene, it's not just the room that you're in; it's the entire world, right? Unless that's the intention, unless it's supposed to be just the room that you're in. It's usually the entire world that you have to think about. For example, a criticism that my teacher had early on when I was in my course, right? It would be that when I'm in a scene, I'm not really moving around a lot because I'm focusing on my dialogue.
Right.
And it's important to do that because you have to give the illusion to your audience that the room isn't the only thing that exists.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, unless your task is to deliver a, static dialogue, people don't sit completely still while something is happening, right? They're pacing, they're considering they're picking up objects or putting them back down. Or even if you're, I would presume that could apply metaphorically as well, where it's like, if you're playing a character, let's say you're playing a world leader who's in a bunker, who's giving a speech about how the world is, turned upside down. You're sitting at a table with a microphone in front of you and you're giving the speech into a monitor, but metaphorically, you're addressing the world, right? So you probably have to keep that in mind to shape your performance. Otherwise, it's just obvious that you're just in a room by yourself, just talking, reading the lines. Got a couple of points from the chat. Sin says it's imagine it's similar to being a writer. You are being all the characters, sort of. It's a switch of energy between them. Yeah, I think that's very fair. There's a lot of similarities here on acting, or I imagine writing, because writing is the precursor to acting. I mean, you could argue that, but I just think in the way we traditionally think about it, you have to write the script, and that informs the acting of the character. You could do the opposite as well, but I'm thinking chronologically here. Stryker says, so I can bring some more info. I think it's really interesting that you associate switching characters with physicality, because when I had to act for my series and switch between characters, it was a kind of switch in my mind that brought up the movements after, so my process was reversed. Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, the only other comparison that I have heard of is from Andy Serkis, who did the voice of Gollum and Smeagol in Lord of the Rings. During his very famous dialogue, I guess technically a dialogue,
I guess.
He physically turned his head. Left side was Gollum, right side was Smeagol, kind of thing, and that was his cue to switch. But it was also there for the camera and for the effects artists, right? Like if you're listening to a performance like that, obviously you know to switch when you're doing editing. You just switch when the voice is different. But it was also a physical cut, you know? And when you watch the scene, you actually see this. He turns left, he turns right, he turns left, he turns right, and then the camera cuts, and he doesn't turn anymore. It doesn't appear that he turns. The camera cuts. So his head appears to be still, even though he's looking in a different direction. But that's interesting, Striker, that, yeah, you have kind of a switch. You kind of just are like, okay, I'm this character now, I'm this character now. I guess it really, like you said, it's a very subjective science, so it's art, right? So it can be done many different ways, and whatever works for you, I guess, right? And that must be interesting. I'm really curious, like, do you know, with your classmates or your castmates, have you met someone who just took a really unorthodox approach? You know, like we've talked a lot about, like, okay, I gotta imagine what my dog is doing in order to become a dog, or I gotta think of a sad day to think of a sad day. Have you met anybody who takes a completely different approach to how they do things? Like, I don't know, maybe they don't think of sad things, they watch other people be sad, or maybe, you know, they draw on some other kind of practice or experience.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because one of my classmates, he's from I think Slovakia.
Mm-hmm.
So, so what he does a lot of the time is he actually when he does like a duality character, or when he does like a character with a specific like archetype, right? He tries to incorporate like a lot of he tries to incorporate his like Russian like heritage, as in like he'd do his like Russian accent, and and you know, at like one time he actually did like a Russian dance out of nowhere, and he was like, whoa, okay, what is he doing? But we went with it, and he actually ended up being hilarious, and it was, you know, it was good. So yeah, I don't know, like that's kind of the craziest thing that I've seen, but I know that like a lot of people do like things differently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you can like list like several actors in, like, you know, the industry that like takes like really unorthodox approaches. Like, for example, Joaquin Phoenix, who like when he did the Joker, I think what he said was like he ate like an apple a day and that's it.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that it's like primarily what gets you into that character, or what helps you understand that character. From, again, going back to like my role playing experience, it takes me a while. It takes me a little while to, I mean, in that case, I am creating the character, so I have to do a lot of the legwork there. Whereas in most acting, you're at least given their background, or you're given their direction. But it still takes me a little while to kind of get comfortable with that character and go, yes, I know this character, I can be this character for sure. And I imagine that's another level of preparation, where you're kind of researching the role, or you're, you know, maybe you have an idea of what the character's going to be like, but now you want to add some reality to it. So it's like, well, I understand what it's like to be, I don't know, a mechanic who owns like a small shop and is struggling financially. Like, you know, maybe the actor could say, well, I know what it's like to struggle financially. I had to be a waiter for years, or busboy, while I was trying to get acting gigs. But they don't know anything about like being a mechanic, so they might go and hang out at a mechanic shop, so they don't talk nonsense, right? So they don't say something ridiculous.
Yeah. I agree. I completely agree.
Tom Hardy did that. He when he went for the role of Bronson, who is Britain's most violent prisoner, and has spent most of his time in solitary confinement, even though he's never actually killed anybody. He actually went and met the guy and he was in an interview because he was on about like he wanted to capture Bronson's character,
Right.
and he was terrified. Like you all know Tom Hardy, he's a big lad, but he was terrified to go and meet Bronson because, as he said, Bronson's a real hard man and he's an actor playing hard men. But that's how he got that's how he learned the mannerisms. He went and sat for a couple of months, just every day he was going and spending hours, like a couple of hours with him and chatting to him and getting his backstory, and it was all so he could learn how to switch the character on when he needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a very extreme way of doing it, like, but pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys good to jump back into Gambit?
Yeah, man.
Holy, yeah.
All right. That brings me to another question. So we've talked a lot about the process of acting, kind of individually or with your cast, and kind of becoming your character. But when you're considering the stage or the screen or any kind of audience like that, are there must be considerations that you have to, like, things that you have to consider to translate for that setting. So here's what I mean by this.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at writing, there are sometimes things that you have to do or that are better to do to make your writing or your screenplay more fitting for a book versus more fitting for a movie, right? Like there's changes that you have to make. So as an example, like, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. The books can go on and on about a setting, because it's important to really immerse yourself in the richness of the forests and the mountains. And because it's a book, you can take all the time you want doing that. In a movie, you can't. So the way that you translate that is you don't have dialogue talking about it, but you have these long sweeping shots that tell the audience, hey, you see how we're spending like some prime film looking at these mountains? These mountains are beautiful and important to the world. And it's a different way. So I'm wondering is like, when you're acting, if you're playing a character and I say, okay, play him on a stage, and now I turn around and I say, cool, now play him in a movie. Obviously the answer is going to be very wide, but if you can think of some, like, in general, how do you approach that? How do you consider that, and what changes do you make?
Yeah. That's a good question again. There's so many good questions coming in. Yeah, when it comes to translating a like a theater piece into like a movie, for example, right? You have to consider your position to the camera, but you also have to consider like being like the more intricate things that you do. For example, there was a film that I did for media, right? And there was a scene where I had to get really close, and this was like a performance that we already did for like a theater piece, right? We had to get really close to the to me to actually like see me, right? And I couldn't just do the normal thing that I did like for the last time, right? Because last time the audience was really far away.
Right.
So what I did was I obviously used my body, right? But I also enhanced, like, I basically put more focus on my face. Right? Like, for example, there's I'd raise my eyebrow, or make it I'd move my mouth a bit. I'd breathe in and make puff up my cheeks, things like that. And it's also important to understand that not everything in a theater performance would work well in a cinema, a film performance, right?
Right.
Like for example, if you have like a really long dialogue, that would be better in a. Sorry, I'm trying to think of like what I'm gonna say while I'm fighting enemies. So bear with me.
Not easy either.
Yeah. While in a theater, like in a performance where people are sitting down, like really getting into it, that would be better. For us, like a piece of film, that wouldn't be as good because they wouldn't be as engaged. Well, I don't want to say as engaged because you can still get engaged. Like they wouldn't be as into it as like a piece of theater because they're not actually there, right? So a lot of the time, like you see this a lot, right? Where like directors for like pieces of theater and directors for film, they would cut a lot of things out in film, right? And that's intentional because they don't want to lose the audience's interest or what you don't want to watch like a Netflix show, for example, and like have Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight just talk like for I don't know 10 minutes straight and do nothing but that.
Right. Gonna interrupt you for a quick moment. Juliet, hello, Juliet. How are you doing?
Hey, Juliet.
Always gotta interrupt for the fiance. How are you doing? Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's you're considering the different media that you're in, right? And it's something that a lot of people don't really think about. But yeah, like that's why it's an adaptation, because with story, like I thought about it a lot with stories, where it's like, yeah, for example, my favorite franchise ever is Star Trek. Star Trek, and I firmly believe that Star Trek is better done on television than in movies. Nothing about the movies, but the very premise of Star Trek is all about exploration. It's about exploring the human condition and exploring the universe. And movies, they tend to move a lot faster, and it's kind of difficult to make a movie move slower, and it's generally not a good idea. So I've always said that I think like Star Trek is a series that should exist. It should focus on television.
As far as that goes, as far as that, mind if I cut you off there?
Yeah, go for it.
As far as that goes, it's all about pacing, right?
Yeah.
Like, naturally, like a piece of theater would be longer, would have like a slower pace than a piece of film because they have more time to actually do what they want to do. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Sorry, continue.
No, it's good. Yeah, I like what you were saying about like, okay, I used to do this as a theater piece, now I'm gonna do it as a cinema or film. So the camera is gonna be much closer than the audience will be in a theater. So you have to really focus up more a bit on your facial expressions, your use of space. Go for it.
Sorry, one time I was going to say, obviously, sometimes that could be reversed. Like sometimes when you're in the theater, you'd be focusing more on your face than on a piece of film.
Right, because maybe in the film it'd be like there'd be music or there'd be like cutting between different scenes, but in the theater they're just watching you, right?
Yeah, I mean it depends on the context, on what the scene is, what it's meant to portray, and all that. Like for example, in a wide shot, like for example, Pirates of the Caribbean 2, when Johnny Depp is running away from the natives, right? He's you're mostly looking at how he's running, right? And that's the point, because that's meant to tell you what who that character is at that moment. That's what I think.
Nice. So, all right, chat. We are coming up probably toward the end of the official section that will go up on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, feel free to drop some comments or anything like that. The Discord link is in the description, so you can join there if you ever want to sign up or catch the Twitch stream live. But yeah, get your questions in before we get to the end here. Christelle
First come,
says,
first serve.
yeah, Auntie Christelle says, do you have a preference doing film or theater?
I want to do film. I want to do film professionally, although I really do enjoy theatre because I feel like I could do more things in theatre than in a film. Because a lot of the time they edit things. Most of the time in film, most of the work is like in post production, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the fact that in theatre, it really in a weird way it helps me focus because there's more pressure on me to actually perform, right? Like when you're under pressure and you're too scared to fail, so you try to do it as perfectly as possible. Yeah, that's how I feel, but it's not like that exactly. Well, obviously, sometimes I'm scared what the audience would think, but
So
yeah, that's why I like about theatre. It's more like you're more it's more like you're focused and you're more focused on like what you're saying and what you're doing than in like a film.
Now here's a related question. So a lot of post what are they called? A lot of post production work in film, right? We just talked about that. Now one thing I've wondered is, and I don't know if you've learned this in school, if there's any research on this, but
yeah,
do actors sometimes get a glimpse as to what some of that post production is going to look like before they finish principal acting? Because when you watch a movie or television, as you start looking at it, you're like, wow, this music fits this scene so well, or the way that they cut between them really like enhances the story. And I've often wondered, like, did the actors get a glimpse of that? Because sometimes I can imagine them not wanting to do it, and sometimes I can imagine that would really help. Like it would be helpful if you kind of knew what they were planning on doing, to help inform your acting, right? It's like a lot of these CG movies, you're acting opposite like a CG Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, it would kind of help to know what Sonic the Hedgehog looks like as you're speaking to him, right? So I'm just wondering, is that a thing, or is it all just done later? Suck it up, actor, and do it later.
yeah. Yeah, that's one of the most important things that you understand as an actor what the scene is trying to do. So yeah, like, well, unless like you're in like a Marvel movie, for example, and you're trying to keep a secret from the audience, because in a lot of Marvel movies, people try to leak things and know what's going to happen before the movie comes out. Yeah, unless you're really trying to keep a secret, it's that usually actors get to like understand what the scene or what the performance is gonna be like after the post production.
Okay, well that's good, because I would imagine that would be helpful. Like, I'm not an actor, but if I were to act, it would be nice to know, like, hey, what kind of score are you imagining for this scene, and maybe could I hear a sample of it? That would kind of help to set the stage, I think.
I mean, some actors, they're directors of their own work. Like, look at, for example, A Quiet Place, who was directed by the main protagonist. I forgot the name of the actor, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, yeah.
John Krasinski. Yeah, he obviously he knows all about it because he's the one who wrote it. So.
A couple of quick fire questions coming in. What was the name of the hardest character you ever played, and why were they hard? And if you don't know the name or don't remember, like, what about them was difficult?
Hardest character I played. I think the hardest character that I played was. Yeah, the hardest character that I played was. I don't remember his name, but there's this character from a play called The Pillowman, and basically what that character was going through in that scene was, in the scene that we were doing, was he was being interrogated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's meant to be like this frail, oh, I didn't do nothing wrong, like kind of character, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I it was difficult because I didn't really have like, I didn't really have much to go off of because I was kind of new to the whole thing. But it was also because I wasn't really used to, because I have a naturally deep voice. I wasn't really used to like doing that consistently. Because I don't know about you, but when you're doing a voice for the first time, it's kind of difficult to get it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely outside of your normal range. I could see that.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
What's the biggest secret you've had to keep regarding a film? And for an example, Luke, the guy who played Luke Skywalker, because again, fibro brain kicking in, he was the only person who actually knew, besides George Lucas and one other person, that Vader was going to be his father.
Right.
Yeah. And the way it worked is they slipped him a piece of paper one day, just the three of them in a meeting. He read it and he went, "Is this real?" And they went, "You can't tell us. You literally cannot tell anyone, and we will know if you do, because it won't be the surprise we're expecting." So, have you ever had to do anything like that?
Yeah, actually, that's funny because the solo performance that I did for college, it's the whole theme of my performance was meant to be mystery, right? So I took that literally, and when I did my whole scene for my performance, the idea was that it wasn't clear to the audience it wasn't clear to the audience what my character's intention was. It would slowly be revealed over time. For example, for example, at the beginning of the scene, I'd just be your normal everyday, posh person, right? In high society. I'd be admiring artwork and doing this, doing that, and then I would slowly lift the veil, and towards the end of the scene, I would be, you could tell that I'm a bit insane, and that I might have done something bad, right? And then at the end, you would know that, oh, the artwork that I was talking about those are actually my victims.
Yeah, recontextualizing what you've already, discussed or acted through.
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest secret I had to keep.
Nice. Vero asks, what about language adaptations? Do you know what it looks like to act for a piece translated from a foreign source material, or like an English reboot of a piece that only exists in a foreign language? So have you done anything like that, Dor?
I did, but since I'm terrible because I only really speak fluent English. But when I do I do an adaptation of a performance in a different language, I usually just hold on a second. I usually just basically try to do it in my own way. And by that I mean I take the original text and I interpret it, I put a twist on it, right? Say for example, there was this one Spanish script that I had, right? And I went through it in Google Translate to see what it said, right? But since I didn't understand the language, right, and the context and what it was meant to mean exactly, completely, because obviously I didn't speak Spanish, instead I would try to recontextualize it. Instead of this, it would be that, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, you're making it your own, right? Like you've talked about that one before, so yeah, makes sense. Let's see. Sid says, remember how Crispin Freeman said that Itachi and Alucard were two of the hardest roles to play because their voices were so low. So in the fandom, we all say Alucard was just as much of a pain in the butt for the actor as he was for the other characters. Okay. Yeah. That's pretty funny. Yeah, without the original writer and translator, personal interpretation makes absolute sense, says Vero. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say when they talked about like the voice, I just remembered like how a lot of people just found Christian. I mean, his performance was great, but Christian Bale when he did the Batman voice, it was so silly. It was just like, I'm Batman. Like he could barely understand what he was saying like half the time.
Well, to be fair, I think there was an issue in the original like trailers for those Batman films where the audio mixing was really bad. Like I remember in particular the third Batman movie, the audio mixing for the trailer made Bane and Batman almost impossible to understand because it was just it was just kind of it was just kind of garbled together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can understand that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're coming up to the end, so a dream job or a dream role. What would your dream role be?
A dream role. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Anybody, anywhere, from any time or any film franchise, whatever, or even one that doesn't exist. They come to you and they say, "You got the part, kid." So, what would it be?
Okay, my dream role. This will probably never happen, but I mean, his whole thing.
You heard it here first, chat.
My dream role would be, well, two dream roles actually. Number one, obviously, I'd love to be. This is again probably never happen, but to be an Indiana Jones film or a Steven Spielberg film, right? But preferably Indiana Jones film because I just love the franchise so much. Or I'd play a villain, like an iconic villain, like Joker, for example. But like it's if I ever do get to that point, I mean, heck, I guess dreams really do come true.
As a fellow actor who was in an Indiana Jones movie once said, "Don't let your dreams be dreams.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Don't sell yourself short. I mean, these things happen, and I think you can get wherever you want to go. Hard work.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Freebird, welcome. How you doing?
Freebird missed like the entire thing.
Hey, Freebird.
Yeah, that's okay. Freebird's quite busy these days. Yeah, what kind of a villain would you want to play? Just in general, or do you have a kind of villain in mind?
I mean, Joker would be the most fun to do. Let's be honest here. Joker would be the most fun to do.
Do you have a Joker that is inspiring or interesting to you? Some interpretation of the character.
There's a obviously Mark Hamill's Joker is like inspiring to everyone, but there's I don't know if you ever played Batman: The Enemy Within. It's a Telltale game.
Oh, okay.
And Joker's in it, and I just like, and that just it's weird because it's from a game, but that Joker really does like, man, he made it his own, but it also feels like it feels like Joker, right? Yeah, if you ever get the chance to play that game, you should totally play that. It's a great Telltale game.
Nice. Awesome. Six, you got any final questions or anything like that?
No. I think everybody's asked amazing questions tonight, so it's been a good one.
Try to answer them as best I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good, man. All good.
Yeah, completely agree. All right, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to do the outro for the YouTube video, and then we can just hang out for a little bit. Dork, thank you very much for hanging out with us and letting us interrogate you and pick your brain on the world of acting.
I will never tell you anything.
I appreciate I appreciate your time and your your volunteering to hang out with us. So thank you for that. Chat,
It's
thank
been
you
fun.
all so much for the questions. We are continuing to stream for a little bit longer, but I just want to thank you all for the questions and your attention and everything like that. If you're interested in becoming kind of a guest on this segment, we're looking to do it on Wednesdays, and you can find the sign up sheet in the Discord. If you're over on YouTube, thank you so much for jumping in. Feel free to tell others about it. Links to the Twitch channel and the Discord are in the description below. Drop some stuff in the comments. If you're an actor, you know an actor, what do you think about this kind of thing? And again, if you are interested in joining us and either watching the stream live or becoming a guest, it can be any topic that you are passionate and knowledgeable about. I want to hear about it. I want to learn about it. Even if you're like, I saw a couple of, I went to 3 ballerina lessons, but I think it's really interesting. I would love to pick your brain on it. So don't be shy. Come on in and go to the Discord, and you can sign up there. So for YouTube, thank you all very much for hanging out and watching. Feel free to check out other content. And as always, be safe, be kind, and we'll see you all next time. Bye now.